Good evening to everyone. Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. So, what page are we on today?
I think it's
157. 157.
Correct.
Second paragraph.
Okay, early. Yes. 157, second paragraph. All right, that is the five sense objects, yes? Okay. So, the five sense objects enter at the stage of presence. The five sense objects, so page 157. The five sense objects enter at the stage of presence. The five sense objects, visible form, etc., are material phenomena and thus endure for 17 mind moments. Since the sense object is still weak at the sub-moment of arising, it can enter the avenue of sense only when it reaches a stage of presence. We discussed this last week, isn't it? Yeah, we discussed that part last week. To those of you, I see a couple of fresh new faces, so it is in the recording, right? So if you have missed it, it is in the recording already. So let us continue. Therefore, if a visible form as object, so now it is if a visible form as object, we are talking about a chakku arammana, right? Chakku arammana, a form taken through the eye. When no active cognitive process is taking place, the bhavanga flows on a series of chittas, all of the same type, right? So there is no difference of the bhavanga, right? There is no difference of the bhavanga. We call it the bhavanga because it is where the object is the patisandhi, the object which has been taken as patisandhi, bhavanga, and chuti, that is the object. So it just like, for example, a consciousness takes a chakku arammana, a bhavanga is where the mind takes as object the consciousness of chuti, bhavanga, and patisandhi, which arose in the past life and set foundation to this life, right? So for example, if you were born with all your faculties, normal not normal, but as intended for human being, then that would mean mind and body. That would mean that you are born for trihetuka patisandhi, which is a consciousness which has three roots: non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, alobha, adosa, amoha. Because of that, now it would be the bhavanga would take that consciousness as object. But this state is a very subtle state. It is so subtle. That is why I think 2 classes ago I mentioned the issue with arose in Burma with regard to Pauk Sayadaw saying that one can meditate upon the bhavanga and observe the bhavanga. The Sangaraja Swami Mahansa, the Sangaraja, Venerable, the head of the Sangha in Burma, said it is so subtle. How is a person able to see this? A normal person, right? That is why that question arose, right? Anyways, let's go ahead. The bhavanga flows on a series of chittas, all of the same type, hanging on to a single object. That is either kamma nimitta, or gati nimitta, right? This is what we have now spoken about. because it is through kamma nimitta or gati nimitta that this object is set for the next life, right? So if anyone does not understand, please feel free to disturb me at any, not disturb, but interject at any time that you wish to. The same object, the same as the object of the last jhana process in the immediately preceding existence. The same object of the last jhana process in the immediately preceding existence. This is talking about the chuti chitta viti. That is the dying mind process. This happens so fast, right? This happens so fast. Some might imagine, what if one's life is cut off instantaneously, without any warning? You don't even know that you die. So, yes, still, at the moment when the life is cut off or there is a disturbance to the body where it results in death, the chuti process will happen. The chuti process will happen. That is why in the ancient time, usually you are not an enemy. Even an enemy will not kill you while in prayer. Why? Because apparently they believe you would go to a good place. So an enemy will not kill you while you're in prayer, right? And in the Vedas, it speaks about how these treasures, in Sri Lankan, we are quite sort of familiar with this, how treasures, nidana, right? How they have protective sort of bhutas with them, right? And apparently it is explained how this is sort of facilitated is a person, a person who is under the king or under the person, whoever hides the treasure in that place, shows this to the servants or whoever, and tells them, okay, this is yours, right? This is yours. You can enjoy it as you wish. And as this person is rejoicing, for example, if you are to win a lottery, you'll be like, oh my gosh, you'll be so excited for it, isn't it? Hopefully you'll think, oh, I'll give Bhante some as well. But it is like that rejoicing, then it is said that the neck is cut off at that moment when one is rejoicing upon that sort of treasure, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, and then one arises at the presa over the treasure, right? So this chuti, this dying viti, will always arise if there is an interruption to your body, which will end up in you dying, right? So it is something which happens so fast. The same at the very last moment, at the very moment a sense object enters a sense door, one bhavanga chitta passes. At the very moment a sense object enters a sense door, one bhavanga chitta passes, known as the atita bhavanga, the past life continuum. Then another two bhavanga chittas vibrate owing to the impact of the object. Now, this is explaining, to those of you who are new, this is explaining the bhavanga does not arise because there was an object which appeared to be cognized. The bhavanga is already in its stream of flow. When the object arises, we call the bhavanga now another name as atita bhavanga, to signal or for our knowledge to know that this is the moment that the object entered the eye door, for example, or the nose door, or the tongue door, or the body door, right? Or the mind door, If it is a mano dwara vajana, if it is a mano dwara viti, right? So atita bhavanga is a term that we call the bhavanga, right? It is same as the bhavanga, but we call it atita bhavanga just to sort of connote the fact that Now there has been an object which has impinged upon the sense door. If you say impinged on the mind, it is wrong. The sense door, right? The sense door. Now, let's continue. At the very moment a sense object enters a sense door, one bhavanga chitta passes, known as Atita bhavanga, the past life continuum. Then another two bhavanga chittas vibrate owing to the impact. So owing to that impact to sort of wake one up, like one is to wake, like one is to awaken from a deep sleep, to wake oneself up. That vibration it takes for the now to completely wake up, for the object to mature, where now you are able to cognize your object. That is why it takes altogether three bhavangas: the Atita bhavanga, the bhavanga chalana, which is the vibrational bhavanga, it shakes, and the bhavanga upacheda, which is the cutting off, right? Which is the cutting off of the bhavanga and starting of the process of cognition, right? Of that object, of that respective object. At the very moment a sense object enters a sense door, one bhavanga chitta passes, known as Atita bhavanga, the past life continuum, and another bhavanga chitta vibrates, two bhavanga chitta vibrate owing to the impact of the object. The second interrupting the stream of bhavanga. The second impact of the object, the second interrupting the stream of bhavanga, right? In the sub-commentaries, these are distinguished as bhavanga chalana, vibrational life continuum, and bhavanga upacheda, a rest life continuum. Thereafter, with the arising of the five-door adverting chitta, the stream of consciousness emerges from the process freed state and launches into a cognitive process, a vitipata, right? A vitipata. Have we understood up until this point? Any questions? Anyone? Everyone's okay? All right. The 29 sense sphere jhavanas, that is 12 unwholesome types. Okay, this is a new one. The 29 sense sphere jhavanas, right? The 29 sense sphere jhavanas, that is 12 unwholesome types, 8 each of the great wholesome and great functional types, and the functional smile producing chitta. Only one type of chitta runs for all the 7 occasions of the jhavana process. So the jhavana process in a chitta viti with a predominant object, right? You understand what I mean by predominant object, I hope. Yes. A mahantaram, ati mahantarammana viti, a predominant object, where you are, for example, now I am looking at you all, you are a predominant object, right? Now, while I am looking at you all, the screen, right? I also do see the books which are on the shelves and all of that, but those are not ati mahantarammana. That only becomes ati mahantarammana when I cognize saying, or when I turn my attention to know what is behind the computer, right? What is behind the computer. So, when a very great object in a vitipata, in a conscious process of a atimahantarammana viti, a mind process pertaining to a predominant object, a great object, there are 7 moments of the mind which is allocated for, no, not allocated, which is called the jhavana process, which is called the jhavana process. This jhavana process is where karma is produced, right? This is really where judgments are made. This is where decisions and conclusions are made in terms of bringing or working together with the object, right? With the object. So the jhavana chittas, there are 29 sense sphere jhavanas. Now these consciousnesses, let's look at the consciousnesses. 12 unwholesome, 8 each of the great wholesome and great functionals and the smile producing. Now, all of these chittas, what's the similarity of all of these chittas? These are all karma chittas or action chittas, right? For example, if we take the functional chittas, eight great functionals, these are the consciousnesses that the arahants would be using to interact with the sense-sphere plane, right? Now, these are the consciousnesses that one would use to interact with everything around you, to do things to perform things. Now, these are the consciousnesses which go into producing some sort of karma. That is why it is a javana chitta. Is that understood? Anyone who doesn't understand, who has a question on that? What is a javana chitta? Shriyani, you look a bit confused. You don't understand, Shriyani? Which part? Sujata?
Excuse me, Bhante.
Yes.
I have just joined in. I want to know what the page is, please.
157. Sujata.
Thank you very much.
Shriyani, what is it that you cannot understand? Which part? You unmute your mic, Shriyani.
The javana and the consciousness, when you say the action.
Yeah. All right. Now, we mentioned it is through these javanas that karmas are produced. Karmas, we know, karma traditionally we say good karma, bad karma, right? Traditionally. But if we go into the proper definition of karma we know is action, right? Karma, which is a word formed with the root kam, K-A-M, means action. Any action which is performed is karma, right? Be it good, bad, neither good nor bad. It is still karma, right? These karmas are what javanas produce. So if so, all the consciousnesses, if we look at all the consciousnesses, we have the 12 unwholesome, right? Now thinking about the 12 unwholesome, we have the lobha, the greed-rooted consciousnesses, we have the hatred-rooted consciousnesses, we have the delusion-rooted consciousnesses. These are consciousnesses. If I am to hit someone, I would hit someone with a hatred-rooted consciousness. If I am to steal something, or if I am to sort of look at a pretty sort of a dress, or something which is nice, which I like, then that is a lobha. Now these are all actions of the mind, which leads to actions of the body or verbal actions, isn't it? Usually when we say action, we think, okay, body. No, mind seeping into or creating bodily and verbal intimation, right? Bodily and verbal intimation. It starts in the mind, isn't it? Now that action, we have the 12 unwholesome. Then we have the 8 great wholesome. In Pali, it was the Sobana Sobana, the Maha Sobana, Maha Kusala, right? Which is the great wholesome. Great wholesome, if you're giving some dana, if you're doing something which is good, if you're doing something which is kind, those are to do with the 8 great wholesome, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If good things are done by arahants, it is the 8 great functionals, right? That is because there is still karma. However, when arahants perform it, now to those of you who have joined, we have gone through this discussion. Arahants produce karma. However, because there is no tanha and attachment and craving and ignorance, this karma will not produce a rebirth. Mm-hmm. right? This karma will not produce a rebirth. So traditionally, we say, okay, arahants don't produce karma. But by that statement, what they are actually referring to is arahants don't produce janaka karma, or karma which creates rebirth, right? Which creates rebirth or allows for a patisandhi process to occur. Right? So there are karmas like that. For example, if you're dreaming of something, let's say you're killing someone in your dream, or you're doing some meritorious things in your dream. Now, those things will not, it is karma, however, it will not determine your patisandhi. Why? Not powerful enough. So we also have karmas like that, which are created but do not lead to patisandhi. Arahants, similarly, those ones, for the arahants, it's similar, but of course, they don't have the bad ones. Even in the good or the normal ones that they do, it doesn't create a rebirth. So that is what all of these, and then we have the smiling consciousness, which is again an arahant consciousness. These are all actions. These consciousnesses are all used as actions. That is why all the Javana consciousnesses are action consciousnesses. None of the ahetuka are Javana processes. None of the vipakas are Javana processes. It is only the action. Now, when I say vipaka, this came up the last time, Dil brought it up, the pala is known as vipaka sometimes, right? Actually, pala is known as vipaka because it is a result of the magga consciousnesses. Pala is only known as a vipaka in the Javana because pala, or sotapanna pala, sakuddagami pala, anagami pala, and arhanta pala is the only vipaka that you can command. Meaning, if you have attained it, you can go into the samapatti and enjoy that pala, that fruit, that vipaka. Right? So that is the only vipaka which comes as Javana, but we will come to that. Is that understood? Shriyani?
Yes, Bhante. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on. The object is called very great. Who are the Pushpa? Pushpa is missing today. Pushpa? Sure. Okay. Pushpa is missing. The object is called very great. In the process, with a very great object, the object arises simultaneously with the arising sub-moment of the Atita Bhavanga. Right now, this is very great, meaning this is the Atimahanta Rammana Chittaviti, very great object. In the process, with a very great object, the object arises simultaneously with the arising sub-moment of the Atita Bhavanga. The object arises. Remember, the object arises, but we don't see the object as yet. Why? Because the object needs time, one mind moment to mature. It is because of that maturing process that it is Atita Bhavanga, Bhavanga Chalana, and Bhavanga Upacheda. Right? The Bhavanga, that is the Bhavanga being disturbed. The mind being overtaken because now a visible object has presented itself. When it has presented itself, it will be taken in. Now, when it is taken in, the Bhavanga process is disturbed. And because it is disturbed, it is allowed. It is then the Bhavanga, the mind must awaken from that Bhavanga. Right? Now, this happens, we will come to it, but in between the Viti processes also, for example, if now we cognize different, I feel like I'm going too fast. Am I going too fast today? No? Okay. Okay. So, when we take an object and when one Viti process is running and has finished, there is two Bhavangas or series of Bhavangas before the next Viti process, right? This is to, in a way, to sort of bridge the gap, if I may use that word, that Bhavanga is sometimes, now let us say you are mad at something, or you are, let's use that example, you are mad at something, right? Or let's say you are in a wholesome mind, right? And suddenly you get mad at something. What happens now to bridge this gap between the different types of consciousnesses arising? There is something called a agantuka bhavanga, or a guest bhavanga. This guest bhavanga, there is nothing different. There's nothing different. It is the same object of bhavanga. There's nothing different. However, we use that term to say there is a process how this viti is somehow brought into the level of this viti, right? Because sometimes now with the variation, this is to say that when a variation of consciousness occurs, if it is just the, now if I'm taking sound, eye, taste, body sensation, all of that in, all of that is being taken one after another. There is no need for a guess bhavanga. But all of a sudden, from a wholesome state of mind, there is an unwholesome state of mind arising. How does the mind balance this? From a guess bhavanga. We will come to that later, right? We will come to that later, just a point of information, right? Since the sense object and the sensitive matter, pasada rupa, of the sense organ, both have a duration of 17 mind moments. They both perish simultaneously with the second registration chitta. With the second registration chitta. Thus, this kind of cognitive process runs for a full 17 mind moments, right? Runs for a full 17 mind moments, of which 14 chittas, beginning with the 5-door adverting chitta, are considered proper chitta, considered process chittas proper, right? This is to say, we spoke about the time of existence, the time span of the chitta, the consciousness, and of physical sense of phenomena, right? While the mind prolongs for one chittakana, what is one chittakana? Now, if someone asks you, okay, what is a mind moment? What is the answer? A mind moment is upada titi banga, arising, possessing, passing away. This is known as a mind moment, right? This is known as a mind moment. 17 of these, 17 of those mind moments equates to the time that a sense object and the pasada rupa, right? Now, this is not to say that the pasada rupa dies away, right? Or your pasada rupa vanishes. As you know, rupa kalapa, this will be discussed in the rupa chapter, but rupas also change, isn't it? Rupas also rise and demise, right? There is a rising and passing away. That happens together with the sense object because they have the same lifespan, right? They have the same lifespan. Is that understood? Right? Is that understood, Devika? All right? Yeah? Anyone who doesn't understand that? Who would like me to repeat? Okay. To those of you who do not have the cameras on, you can just signal to me with one of the emojis if you want me to repeat. Pushpa is here. All right. So, then, thus, this kind of cognitive process, this kind of cognitive process, page number 157, thus, this kind of cognitive process runs for a full 17 mind moments, of which 14 chittas, beginning with the 5-door adverting chitta, are considered process chittas proper. This cognitive process is also known as Tadarammana vara. A course ending with registration. When a course ends with registration, it is full, complete, right? I like to always use registration or compare a registration to the duty of a secretary, where, you know, reports are taken, right? A registry is made, data is processed, and the file is filed, something of that sort, right? Whereas when you come to the later VTs, it is not clear what is this. It's not clear as yet, as much. Why is it not clear? Because data has not been properly, or enough time has not been, time and attention has not been given to the object, right? Has not been given to the object. Yes, Dale.
Bhante, can you just, now we are reading this about this 14, now this sentence you read, does this kind of cognitive runs for a full 17 mind movements, of which 14 chittas, beginning with the 5 do adverting chitta, considered the process chitta proper. Now, can we look at the page facing it, 156? Because I was trying to work this out, and this is, I think, what it relates. That's the top of 156. To this extent, I think this is the same thing. 17 mind movements are completed, namely 14 access of process consciousness. So only now I know that that starts from the adverting one. So that starts from the 4th and it goes on to the 17th. So that's the 14. Plus it says 2 vibrations of the life continuum. So that's the 2 and the 3. And 1 mind moment that had passed prior to the process, which is 1, which is the past one. So I couldn't work out what this 14, but now in this sentence, it becomes very clear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Referring to the very great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Thank
right. So, yes. All right. So, then coming Tadarammana, a course ending with registration. Moving on, the last paragraph. The connection of the cognitive process, the connection of the cognitive process described in the text with the 6 sixes may be understood as follows. When a visible form impinges on the eye sensitivity, then, supported by the eye base, there arises an eye consciousness. Taking as the object, taking as object the visible form that has impinged on the eye. For the eye consciousness, the eye sensitivity is the base and the door. The visible form is the object. The other chittas in the process, the 5 do adverting, the receiving, investigating, and determining consciousnesses, the javana and registration, are states of mind consciousness. Are states of mind consciousness. Let's read that paragraph again, right? The connection of the cognitive process described in the text with the 6 sixes may be understood as follows. When a visible form impinges on the eye sensitivity, then, supported by the eye base, there arises an eye consciousness, taking as object the visible form that has impinged on the eye. For the eye consciousness, eye sensitivity is the base and the door. The visible form is the object. The other chittas in the process, the 5 do adverting, the receiving, investigating, determining, the javanas and registration are mind consciousnesses, right? Are mind consciousnesses. Is that clear? Should I elaborate? Yes, Damsiri.
That means, is it mind-based?
That means, is it mind? What do you mean?
Now, we know that when it comes to dhatu or elements, all right, there's mano dhatu and mano vinyana dhatu. So all these are actually either mano dhatu or mano vinyana dhatu, except eye consciousness, which is
Chakku.
Chakku. And now that what we say here, these stages of consciousness, or these chittaviti, do they belong to the mind base or Hrdayavastu?
Do they belong to the Hrdayavastu?
Yeah.
Well, do they belong to the Hrdayavastu?
Because it's dhatu, because when it comes to the dhatus or the elements, these are either mano elements or the mano vinyana elements.
So belonging to Hrdayavastu,
Yeah.
in which way? Are you talking about where, in terms of where it arises, or how we would refer to the chitta viti, or
No, where it arises.
where it arises? So
Yeah.
the mind can arise in these places, no? So the viti can take place in the eye.
Okay.
You know, the viti, there is no transport there. It is not required, or it is not required that all the data is transported to one place and it arises according to the Abhidhamma.
Okay.
The
All right.
mind can arise, right? Can arise in all the five senses, in the locations of where the prasada rupas are and the heart base.
Okay. Okay.
Right? So this particular viti, if it is a chakkudwara viti, arises and takes place at the eye. Right? At the eye. And this would also have a connection between all the rest of the senses and the heart base as well.
Yeah,
Right? So
okay.
there is a connection, but this viti arises in the eye. Yes, dear.
Okay.
Bhante, that what you read, so am I right in thinking, so in that process, right, when a visible point impinges on the eye century, then supported by the eye base, there arises an eye consciousness taking as object the visible point that impinge and it goes out to the eye. So for the eye consciousness, the eye century, the base and the door and the visible. So up to there, it is still in the eye. Then from the next chitta on, which is from number 4, the other chittas in the process, from the 5 door center to the receiving investigator, those registration are states of mind consciousness. So very early I asked you, where did it go from the eye to the mind? So that's that process. So that till it comes to the eye base, for the eye consciousness, the eye sensitivity is the base. So that's the chakku prasada, and the door, the visible form with the object.
Yeah, what's the
So,
question, Dil? Tell what's your question?
Question. So up to there, you're still referring to the chakku prasada, which is in the eye, but it's from the process, from the 5 door adverting to the receiving to the investigation, determining jhavanas, and they are the ones which are in the mind. Am I right?
No, the mind, yes, of course it is in the mind, but the mind is not in one place.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
The mind is now, for example, we can see the eye is here, the nose, the tongue, the ears, right? And then the body, right? Wherever we feel some sort of sensation, the mind hence can arise in all of these places.
Oh, I see.
Right? The mind can arise in all of these places.
Okay.
Right? So
Right.
it is not now, for example, I think, okay, maybe the point was not clear last week. I said Panchadwara Vajana, right? Panchadwara Vajana, now I've always been saying turn in the mind, right? But really that was only to sort of, make it easier to understand. But really Panchadwara Vajana, when Panchadwara Vajana, it is not like, it's not like taking the phone and sort of turning it everywhere. It is actually, it sort of arises in that place. When the Panchadwara Vajana is, for example, to the eye, the Panchadwara Vajana arises here. It's not like it arises here and turns it to the eye. You get it?
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante. I always thought up to the pasada, it's in the eye or whatever, chakku pasada, sotra, and then from there it's in the mind. But now what you're saying is not that the mind door, the five sense door, can actually arise in the mind, but the mind can be here or here or anywhere else.
Actually, that is what I thought when I first started reading also, to be honest. Because it seemed like that, isn't it? Where the data is being taken and processed somewhere like a mill, but it's actually...
Right. It's processed here and everywhere.
It's all over.
The mind is non.
Oh, yeah.
Because the mind is non-local. It can be everywhere. That's the reason.
Bhante,
Right.
can I ask
Thank
a
you,
question,
Bhante.
please?
My God, after days of how many months that I have realized
No.
that.
Yes.
Bhante, the IDO process
Yeah.
goes up to the second registration and hands over to the mind after the second registration. Is that how it happens?
Now this is, okay, this is, everyone listen, right? Now, for the sake of understanding, right, we might come up with the sort of concept of handing over. But remember, there is no handing over, right? It is a process which takes the essence, and dependent upon that essence, something arises. A static power arises, right? That holds data within it and a way of process and condition. These have been noted in with different categories by the Buddha to make it understandable for us. For us stupid people. Right? But this is a process which is the niyaya, just like water vapor evaporates if it's hot, just as much as that is a niyaya, right? This process, this way of process happens in such a way. There is no handing over, right? It's like the Panchadwara Vajana, there is no turning, because if there is a turning, who is turning? Me. There can't be a me, no? Right? There can't be anyone who's turning. The mind must be static. When there is a condition, and now how does the mind know? Or this was one of the questions I had. How do we know when there is something to see? How do we know when there's something to hear? Right? That is the duty of the mind. When there is a vibration, it is almost a niyaya in that way, right? It keeps on taking objects. It keeps on taking objects. Now, if you are blind or if you are deaf, right, we know that the other senses are heightened, right? Why? More awareness going into these senses, right? More awareness going into these senses. Even if you are to sort of get a massage and you're just closing your eyes and you sort of allow the massage go on, you feel the massage more, right? Just like that. The attention which is given, or which is now goes into the other senses, is more because it is divided by less, right? Because so remember, it is not a handing off process, it is a niyaya, right? A niyaya not controlled by anyone, right? A niyaya which happens now, the rain is not controlled by the sun, right? The sun is a factor. It doesn't belong to the sun, right? The humidity does not belong to a certain person or a certain thing. it is something which arises when the conditions are of such, right? When the conditions are of such, that is it. Even this process, this is the way it happened. The Buddha saw this process happening, and that he has now sort of regulated it into sections and categories for us to understand, right? For us to understand. Noiling, I feel like I cut you off. Was that your question?
Yeah, that's the question. I just want to know what happens after that. And so after registration, the process doesn't end, does it?
So after registration, we will come to that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so after, but okay, after registration, what happens is really when the process ends, still there is data, right? When Thadalambana arises, the registration and then another registration and the Bhavanga, these are static connections between each moment. These static connections holds information. This information is carried on. That is done. We don't know.
Bhante, can I ask you something?
Yeah, hold on there.
Yeah.
So we don't know how that process occurs. Just as we don't know how, if there is no person, how does karma stick on to us? Is a question, isn't it? Pertinent. You know, if there is no person here, then how does karma stick on to us? Karma stick, that we could say because of our attachment to self, that energy parallels with the energies that we have all committed. So that static energy continues as long as we have avijja and tanha, right? As long as we have avijja and tanha, right? However, even after we know that there are karmas, even after we attain enlightenment, we are affected by. The Buddha, you know, had many karmas. Ariputta Moggallana was killed by that karma, right? In that way. That is, you know, how this connection is there, we really do not know. Right? We really do not know. So, yes, Dil, what did you want to say?
So when I'm looking at the beginning of these 2 pages before, so this is now, so there is an object and we are not turning to it, but somehow the Chakkupasada, you're talking about energy. So this is why there must be some, in the presence of light, in the case of Chakkupasada, when there is light, because if there's no light, you can't see and all this process doesn't take place. So in the case of the Chakku, when there's light or aloka, there is this energy which you're referring to, as we don't know exactly what it is, some niyama, the vibration that comes from that object and alerts so that we don't have to turn. How does it come? The same as how karma follows. The same as if there's a sound, how the space or akasa from
What
which
is
it
the
comes.
question? What is the
The
question?
question is the same way the vibe from this object or from this sound or from something, that this energy or vibrations has some way of being received by the Chakkupasada or the Sotapada, just like karma. That's what you're referring. If there is light, if there is air element for smell, if there's a water element for taste, because nobody's turning to it.
Now, okay. My favorite example, pole sambola. Right? If you don't have the pole, there will be something. But it is not a pole sambola. It will be a ludumirisa. Right? That is that. You know, if you don't have light, there is something in terms of phenomena. However, that phenomena, if the king asks for the pole sambola, right, and you bring that is not going to suffice. That is not going to be taken in because there was something specific asked, right? So, if the light is not there, still there is a phenomena. However, it will not pass as a chakku.
Thank you, Bhante.
It will not be able to be taken by, but you can touch it. Right? Now you have this. If there is no light, I can't see this. Yet I can touch it.
Yeah.
Right? Still not.
Yeah.
But not the chakku. Okay, moving on.
Bhante, a last question.
Yeah.
Bhante, in this sentence, the registrations are states of mind consciousness. What it really means, state of mind consciousness? States of mind consciousness.
Are we asking about the registration?
No. It says the whole thing.
Whole thing from
Yeah.
hydroactivating onwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Here. Okay. So the other chittas in the process, the 5 door, receiving, investigating, determining, governance, registration, are states of mind consciousnesses.
Yeah.
So it was divided. No, it was divided into eye sensitivity, right? The base, eye consciousness. Remember, Pasada Rupa, so that is taken as the form part. Whereas the other process is the mind part. That is, so mind state, that is the mind state, states of mind consciousness. It's a state of mind, right? At the time, because the mind changes, isn't it? Mind is not one thing. The mind consistently changes. At the moment of Tadalambana, the only thing in the mind is Tadalambana. At the moment of the 6th Javana, the only thing in the mind is a 6th Javana. At the moment of Atita Bhavanga, the only thing in the mind is Atita Bhavanga. The mind changes. It is a state of mind. Right? That is why that term has been used to say that this mind, it is not like, for example, we have this whole thing. It's not like we have this whole thing and we are going to study it. No. It arises as it does. It arises as it does with the process, you know, in the present moment. Right? Dhamsri? All right, moving on. They take the same visible form as object and the eye sensitivity as door, but they arise with the support of the heart base. For all the chittas in the process, the bhavanga is also considered a door, right? Again, they take the same visible form as object and the eye sensitivity as door, but they arise with the support of the heart base. Okay, now attention, right? Now, the form in the last paragraph, eye sensitivity, what was the 3? Eye sensitivity, the form, and the
eye consciousness.
Eye consciousness. No.
Yes.
Was it eye consciousnness?
Yes, for the eye consciousness.
So
the eye
eye sensitivity, okay. The visible form and the eye sensitivity, right, has the same lifespan. What is that? 17 mind movements. It ends with the Tadalambana, the second Tadalambana, the second registration. That is clear, right? Now, that object, now this is Dhamsiri, this is the answer to your question in detail, right? Meaning the answer the question you asked where the mind, whether this is mind, right? This is the answer to that now, right? So the chitta viti, through the states of mind that goes through the viti, takes as object what? It takes what is existent, or that form which has arisen and which would continue for 17 mind movements. That form is where? That form is at the eye. Got it? So in the present moment, now this is the chitta, this is the form, this is the rupa. So this will consistently be taking this object. So it is something like this actually, right? With, for example, the bhavanga chalana, bhavanga atita bhavanga chalana, bhavanga upachcheda, chakudwara viti, panchadwara, chakudwara, you know, all of that up until the tadalambana, it's taking that object again and again and again and again and again. That is how they get to work with that object, right? But they are not taking different data. They are holding on to that specific data. Because you must first, it is like, for example, you shine, it is like a torch, right? Now you are shining the torch at something, right? And you have to understand that bit before you're moving it around, right? So this is really like shining that light upon that specific area or upon that specific rupa. Got it? Right? So throughout the 17 mind moments of the Chittaviti process, it is because it takes that object, that the object matures to a level where now the object gives you or creates some sort of change in you. Now, when the object is as powerful, sometimes the object can create a characteristical change in you, a personality change in you, isn't it? You see something, PTSD, you see something that absolutely shocks you, traumatizes you, right? That an experience can change you. It can be such a beautiful experience in your meditation. It is such a beautiful experience that changes you, right? The object is taken, right? And that is why the mind is, that process arises here, right? The process arises here. But because of the static connections all around the body, of course, there should be a interlink for us to be able to put together everything, isn't it? You know, to equate the sound to the taste. Yes, sound to the taste. And we know with the smell or the look, if the food, for example, if the food looks good, you know, that carries on to how well you will also taste the food, right? So likewise. So moving on. Any questions, anyone?
Yeah. But Bhante, the BT part of the cognitive process is the same way that Tadalambana Varana, that is also the cognitive process, and both these are.
Tadalambana Vara is the name given to a Atimahantaramana Viti. Right?
Then the weak pattern is for any cognitive.
Pattern is any process.
Okay.
Any mind process is a weak
right. Right. And both these are 17 mind moments. So you wait till the second registration is finished to say that's completed.
Yes. I mean, you will see that this is the only Chittaviti with 2 registrations at the end.
Yes. Okay.
Right. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Any questions? Are you sure no one has any questions? There are no foolish questions, only foolish answers. So don't worry. All right. All the chittas in the process. Okay. For all the chittas in the process, the bhavanga is also considered a door, since the entire process emerges from the bhavanga, right? Emerges from the bhavanga. Thus, all sense door processes are considered to have 2 doors. The material sensitivity as a differentiating door and the mind door or bhavanga as a common door, right? Again, thus all sense door processes are considered to have 2 doors. The material sensitivity as a differentiating door and the mind door or bhavanga as a common door. Understood? It is basically, 2 names that you can understand for it. Yes? Yeah. Because it has arisen specifically in the I door, this process is called a I door process, right? A I door process. And because it is distinguished by the I consciousness, it is also called an I consciousness process. Since it has arisen with a very powerful object capable of impinging on the sense faculty after only one mind moment has passed, it is called a process with a very great object. Now, this is important to clear out. The Atimahanta Rammana Viti is not a Atimahanta Rammana Viti because the mind chooses it to be a Atimahanta Rammana Viti. The Atimahanta Rammana Viti is Atimahanta Rammana Viti because of the object itself. Right? Because of the object itself. That should be understood. Or else it would seem like the mind is choosing how to cognize. No. When an object of this severity or power arises, this is the way it is processed. Right? This is the way it is processed. It is somewhat like different types of dough. You know, there are wet doughs and then there are hard doughs, isn't it? Right? There was actually this lovely recipe that I made a bread from a couple of months ago. It was so soft like a cake, but it was still a bread dough. If anyone wants a recipe, let me know. We are a multifaceted Buddhist center here. All right, moving on. I don't know what the other people in the internet who are listening to these talks are thinking of me, but it's okay. Who cares? All right, moving on. Okay. Since it has arisen with a very powerful object capable of impinging on the sense faculty, only after one mind moment has passed, it is called a process with a very great object. The cognitive processes in the other states may be understood accordingly with the necessary substitutions. Right? We will come to that part as the different objects are studied. The ancient teachers of the Abhidhamma illustrate the cognitive process occurring in the sense doors with a simile of the mango. A certain man with his head covered went to sleep at the foot of a fruiting mango tree. Then a ripe mango loosened from its stalk fell to the ground. Grazing his ear, awakened by the sound, he opened his eyes and looked. Then he stretched out his hand, took the fruit, squeezed it, smelt it. Having done so, he ate the mango, swallowed it, appreciating its taste, and went back to sleep. Right? And went back to sleep. That is the process that is sort of seen through the Chittaviti, right? Through the Chittaviti. We'll do that again. The ancient teachers of the Abhidhamma illustrate the cognitive process occurring in the sense door with the simile of the mango. A certain man with his head covered went to sleep at the foot of a fruiting tree, right? So this is the experience of a person the mind going into Bhavanga, sleeping, right? At the foot of a fruiting tree. What is that? The sense doors are open. You can't close the ears, no, right? You can put earplugs or whatnot, but still the feelings are there, the smells are there, the sound, whatever, right? The sense doors are open. That is what it's meant by a fruiting tree. Understood? Right? Then fruiting tree covered his head with his head covered, went to sleep at the foot of a fruiting mango tree. Then a ripe mango, that means a form suitable to be cognized, meaning what is ripe then? That is when the four conditions are fulfilled. What are the four conditions? The form, for example, if it's chakku, the form, the mansikara or the attention, the light, and the prasad or the eye sensitivity. If these four are present, right, then this ripe fruit, right, then the ripe fruit, right, then a ripe mango fruit loosened from its stalk fell onto the ground. Then he grazing his ear, right? That is when the Bhavanga has now been sort of interrupted, right? Grazing his ear, the ear was activated, and as it was Bhavanga Upacheda, he got up. Awakened by the sound, he got up, caused by that sound, right? That is the Bhavanga Upacheda. Now you arise. What is that? The eye consciousness, is it? Is it the eye consciousness? Yeah, eye consciousness.
Eye consciousness.
Right? Awakened by the sound. He opened his eyes and looked. Then he stretched out his hand and took the fruit, squeezed it. This is all Javana. Squeezed it, smelt it. Having done so, he ate the mango, swallowed it, appreciating the taste. Appreciating the taste, that is registration, right? Appreciating the taste. You have now noted and concluded the data of that process, the registration consciousness, and then he went back to sleep, going back into Bhavanga. Got it? Yeah, okay. Here, the time of the man sleeping at the foot of the mango tree is like the time when the Bhavanga is occurring. The instant of the mango falling from his stalk and grazing the ear is like the instant of the object striking one of the sense organs, for instance, the eye. The time of awakening through the sound is like that of the five sense door adverting. Okay, so that is the way it has been explained. Okay, five sense door adverting consciousness turning to the object. The time of the man's opening his eyes and looking is like the eye consciousness accomplishing its function of seeing. The time of stretching out his hand and taking the mango is like that of receiving consciousness, receiving the object. The time of squeezing the fruit is that of investigating consciousness, investigating the object. The time of smelling the mango is like that of the determining consciousness, determining the object. The time of eating the mango is that of the Javana experience, the flavor of the object. And the swallowing of the fruit is while appreciating its taste is like the registering consciousness, taking the same object as Javana, as a Javana phase. And the man going back to sleep is the subsidence back into Bhavanga. It should be noted that the entire cognitive process occurs without any self, or subject behind it as an enduring experiencer or an inner controller, a knower outside the scope of the process itself. Right? Is that understood? There is no person mitigating or mitigating what is to be done. It occurs as law, as nature, right? It is in this process that we have conditioned ourselves due to the craving that we see it, or we see the person as I, me, myself, and I. But in actuality, that is also a concept of creation that we have created. You know, that we have created. The momentary chittas themselves exercise all the functions necessary to cognition. So the momentary chittas itself perform, that is the mind at that moment. Right? So it is not like there is the mind here, right? It's not like there is the mind here and the mind is loving, or the mind is empowering the eye area, eye department, for example. You know, the mind of the heart base is not empowering the mind of the eye department to cognize and then taking that empowerment back and giving it to the smell and the taste and all of that. No, that is not what's happening. In the present moment, there is but one mind. This mind arises and passes away depending on where there is an object to cognize. Remember, what is the mind? What is chitta? Chitta is but the action of cognizing. First chapter, day 1, isn't it? Day 2, actually. Day 1 was Panyati. Day 2, right? Chitta is the act of cognizing. It is not the doer. It is not the law setter. It is the act of cognizing itself, isn't it? It is, I think reading this puts things into perspective in a way of how we have sort of weaved that web of existence that keeps us sort of grappled on to whatever it is that we are grappled on to, isn't it? So, coming back, exercise all the functions necessary to cognize. The momentary chittas themselves exercise all the functions necessary to cognition, and the unity of the cognitive act derives from their coordination through the laws of conditional connectedness, right? Law of conditional collectedness, right? Within the cognitive process, each chitta comes into being in accordance with the lawful order of consciousness, chitta niyama. It arises in dependence on the variety of conditions, including the preceding chitta. The object, a door, a physical base, having arisen, it performs its own unique function within the process, and then it dissolves, becoming a condition for the next chitta. Condition for the next chitta. This is somewhat, for example, if we would take the flow of the continental winds around the world, right? For example, because the hot and cold, warm and cold winds meet at locations like Japan, in the Indian Ocean, in places like Peru, you find fisheries. Why? Because the temperature, when it meets the hot and the cold temperatures, allow for the perfect temperature for plankton, and this plankton acts as food and the necessary temperature conditions for these tropical fisheries to happen, and then we have these sort of fisheries, isn't it? Right? If we would look at it in that way, these laws are not bothered whether you have fish to eat or not. The laws operate as and by its own conditions. The laws operate by its own conditions. So even if now the hot and cold winds move from Japan to Alaska, the winds do not bother. You bother. The winds will not bother. Right? Nor does the world bother. It is we who bother. We, because we are used to a certain way or positioning of these things as we have taken it. Coming into light or bringing to light the story again of this craving that we have and this whole sort of concept that we build. Right? The laws operate on its own. They do not have feelings. They do not have any of that. It operates on condition alone. We give it life. We give it life. Right? We give it life. However, these laws are not bothered. In the same way, we give ourselves the life that we think we have. We think we have. Sometimes you might have everything that you so require and once desired. However, because the mind doesn't think so, or the conditions that you think should be there are not there, you think your life is not perfect. But to another person, maybe living in a very poor, maybe destitute and not even having food to eat on the table, that person might think something else, but in comparison, our lives are much better, maybe even perfect, according to his pattern of thought. Again, there is no proper mold of what perfection is. There is no proper mold of what natural is. So if the Buddha has never said that this is natural and this is unnatural, what he has always referred to is kusala, good and bad. Good on which grounds? It is good for you, does not bring any harm to you or other people around you. Bad how? It leads to your mental, spiritual, physical harm, and can lead to the harm of other people around you. Dependent on that, it's bad. Right? So these are really conditions. You know, these are all conditions, but are sort of narrative that we set because of clinging and attachment is what makes it all seem like self. What it all seems like self. Okay, so that is the lesson for today. We will stop there for today. We'll stop there for today. I think physical base having arisen for the next chitta. Yes, so becomes a condition for the next chitta means when one demises, that has an essence where it leads for the other chitta to arise. We will cover that. So then we are going into great objects, right? Ati Mahanta Ramana we've completed. We are going to Mahanta Ramana. So we will complete that. It is, you know, now we have covered the main script of this chapter. Now it is more of sort of understanding the other scripts which are usual, right? Which are applicable and usual to the rest, which will arise, right? So that is does anyone have any questions to ask?
Can I ask a quick
Yes,
question, Bhante, please?
Yeah.
How many chittas are involved in this sense sphere cognitive process? All the chittas or some, not all?
How many chittas are in? The question is not really, could you specify, or not specify, but could you be more specific, Noeline?
Are all chittas involved in this cognitive process, sense sphere cognitive process?
29.
So if it is a sense sphere process, right? If it is a sense sphere process concerning the sense sphere governors, right? The sense sphere governors, then we can take the possibility is that what is the possibility? We can take all the javana chittas, sense sphere javanas,
Yes.
and we can take the potential bhavanga chittas, right? Then we have to take the 19 patisandhi chittas into it, right? 19 patisandhi chittas into it, and the sort of the determining consciousnesses, registration consciousnesses, and all those into it, right? So what is the total then? Because then that is what would then all come to potentially be able to come into a sense sphere process, isn't it?
Yeah, I worked it out to 80.
80.
80. Yeah, 80 or less.
Okay.
Less the sublime resultants, 9 sublime resultants, all the others. Would that be right?
Potential, yes, can be taken as 89. 80 is a
80.
You
89 minus 9, the sublime resultants we don't take, do we? Yeah.
in the rootless one, we don't.
No, it's just the, I think it's just the sense sphere resultants we leave out of the 89.
Okay, shall we calculate that next time?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll calculate it next class. But 80 seems like okay. Let's calculate it next class.
Yeah. Bhante, but
Bring
if
it
it is if it is sense sphere, we have only 54 sense sphere chittas. We can't take the spheres of absorption and the supramandala.
But although sense sphere, but
Yeah.
we can go into jhanas, we can attain nibbana.
So you are taking the spheres of absorption as well.
Talking about potential. Potential within the sense sphere. So we have to then take all the chittas that can arise within the sense sphere plane.
Yeah, but within the sense sphere plane, in that original chart you spoke, there were 54 sense spheres.
Yeah.
Spheres of absorption is 27, and the supramundane 8 or 40. That's how you divide them. And then you say mundane chittas, there are 81, including the 54 in the sense sphere and the 27 of the spheres of absorption.
Yeah.
So if you're asking a specific question about sense spheres, there are 54 of them. But
No.
if you're talking of even those jhavanas, Bhante,
Noeline is what Noeline's question was, as I understood, is what are the consciousnesses that can be in a process in a sense sphere?
Yeah, sense sphere, a cognitive process.
Within a sense sphere, within the karma vachara bhumi which we are living in as a human, what are the chittas that we can experience VTs by?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bhante, in that case, it's all 89.
Yeah.
No, 80. I read in a book,
80.
I can't remember which book, but it said all chittas other than the sense sphere, other than the
Supramundane.
sublime 9 resultants.
Mm-hmm.
Sublime
Supramundane.
resultants. 9 sublime
Not
resultants.
sublime.
Right.
The
Except
the result
sublime resultant.
Yeah,
Because
nine
sublime, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I can't remember where I read it, but I just thought I'll ask you.
Yeah, we will calculate it next time. I think we have already calculated. We have already calculated this number before, actually, but we can do it. Noel, you bring it up next class, Noel. We can calculate it. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Was today's class then clear to everyone? Okay, I hope the newcomers were able to sort of understand. No, there are not much newcomers really. Okay, only Geeta, but Geeta has studied before. All right, so I have something to really